I once thought safety was something tangible, like a student ID in my wallet, like a schedule taped to the dorm wall, like the well-lit path from the library back to my room. At this university, everything was designed to make you believe that as long as you followed the right paths, at the right times, in the right roles, no one would get hurt. I believed that. I believed it until I met Aaron. In my freshman year, I chose to live in the North Dorm, close to the communications department, near the 24-hour coffee shop, and far enough from the party area to avoid the weekend music pounding in my head. I was Dylan. Decent grades, not too standout, not too out of place. I knew how to blend into the crowd without getting swallowed. I also knew how to hide. At a big American university where everyone talked about freedom, hiding the most important thing in my life seemed contradictory, but it was easier than I imagined. Aaron moved into the room across from mine one late August afternoon. I remember it clearly because the smell of fresh cardboard mixed with the hallway paint made me nauseous. His door was wide open, sunlight spilling in strips across the floor, and there he stood, tall, broad-shouldered, brown hair shining like he'd stepped out of a school ad. He smiled at me first, a smile without reason, and asked to borrow a screwdriver. I handed it over, my hand trembling slightly, not because the screwdriver was heavy, but because his gaze lingered on me a beat longer than usual. We started with safe things. Names, majors. Aaron was studying environmental engineering, talking about clean water and climate change like it was personal. I was in communications, better at listening than speaking. We talked about overcrowded classes, professors who called on you randomly, weak coffee, and cheap pizza. Stories that revealed nothing. But in the silences, something brushed lightly, like a small current under the skin. The first week flew by. We ran into each other in the elevator, the library, the long line at the burrito stand. I started getting used to Aaron's stride, the way he tilted his head when listening, the habit of tapping an invisible rhythm on the table with his fingers. I also got used to my heart beating faster when he said my name, Dylan, like it was a private word. One night, the whole floor lost power. Alarms blared, and we stood out on the grass, cold wind cutting through hoodies. Aaron handed me a can of soda, ice cold, and joked that at least we had the sky. Under the dim yellow emergency lights, his face looked different, closer, more real. I wanted to say something that crossed the safe boundary, but I chose to laugh along. I chose silence because I thought silence meant no one got hurt. Then came the study sessions that dragged on longer than necessary. We sat side by side, shoulders brushing, hands accidentally touching, and both pretended not to notice. Each time I told myself, don't complicate things. Here I'd built a stable version of Dylan, enough friends, professors who knew my face, no scandals. I was afraid that just saying what I wanted would make it all collapse like a house of cards. Aaron was different. He didn't seem afraid of hard questions. One late night, as the library was closing, he asked if I'd ever felt like I was living true to myself. I gave a roundabout answer, something like, everyone gets confused sometimes. Aaron looked at me for a long time, not pushing, not smiling, just nodding. That respect made me feel even more cowardly. I started noticing small details. The way he yielded to others, how he listened to stories unrelated to him, how he accepted gaps in conversation. I also started noticing signs that scared me. The looks from a few people when we sat too close, casual questions from classmates about how close I was with Aaron. Each sign was a reminder that safety wasn't natural. It was something to guard, to watch, to protect. Once we went running around the campus lake. It was fall, leaves starting to change, the air thin and sharp. Aaron slowed to match my pace, telling me about transferring schools because his parents divorced, about always starting over. I wanted to say I understood, that I'd started over many times too, just no one knew. But I chose to talk about the upcoming assignment. Safety. Always safety. That night, I lay in bed, the dorm ceiling blindingly white. I thought about the distance between us, just a few steps across the hallway, and the distance I'd built in my mind. I wondered if safety was what helped you survive, or what made you lose the most important things. I didn't have an answer. I just knew that somewhere very close, Aaron existed as a possibility I hadn't dared touch. And so, as our story just began to bloom, I started choosing. choosing to keep myself safe without knowing the price yet. Fall deepened into the campus like an unspoken reminder. Leaves fell thicker on the stone paths, wind carrying the damp smell of earth and the cold metal of railings. Aaron and I developed an unspoken routine: Tuesday morning coffee, Thursday study groups, Sunday runs. Those habits were so safe that I forgot they could be something else, something fragile, breakable. One evening, we sat in the floor's common room. The TV played unwatched news, pale blue light reflecting on the walls. Aaron talked about his upcoming presentation, how he worried he'd speak too fast when nervous. I teased him, saying he was cute even when talking fast. The word cute slipped out like an accident. The air froze for a beat. Aaron smiled, but it was a cautious smile, like stepping on thin ice. I quickly changed the subject. Safety. I pulled it out like a blanket. I knew what I was doing. I knew each avoidance pushed Aaron a little farther away, even if we seemed close on the surface. But at this university, stories spread like wind. I'd heard enough whispers, enough harmless jokes that stung. I didn't want to be the topic. I didn't want my parents getting a call. I didn't want everything I'd built to crumble. That fear wore a cloak of reason, and I let it lead. One rainy night, we sheltered under the library awning. Rain pounded in steady rhythm, the world shrinking to our narrow space. Aaron looked out, then turned to me. "Dylan," he said lowly, "do you ever think, if we keep everything too safe, we'll miss out on something?" The question wasn't new, but the way he asked made it personal, like he was talking about us without naming us. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I said everyone has their own way to live. Aaron nodded, but this time his smile didn't reach his eyes. The rain kept falling. I felt a tiny crack running through what I called stability. From then on, Aaron had silences. Not coldness, but caution. He was still there, still smiling, still studying with me, but I sensed a thin wall had gone up. I told myself it was for the best. At least no one got hurt. A lie I repeated enough to believe. Until the department's Halloween party. I hadn't planned to go, but Aaron texted that he needed a familiar face. I went, in simple costume, standing on the edge of the room full of flashing lights and laughter. Aaron looked different in his makeshift outfit, relaxed, vibrant. He pulled me into the crowd, and for a moment, I forgot what safety was. We danced, shoulder to shoulder, sweat and music blending. When a slow song played, Aaron placed his hand on my back, lightly, like asking permission. I didn't pull away. The world shrank again, but this time because I allowed it. Then I saw the eyes. Not one, but many. I saw curiosity, judgment, and malicious glee. My heart pounded wildly. I pulled Aaron's hand away, forced a smile, said I needed air. He looked at me. A brief look, enough for me to know what I'd just chosen. I stepped outside, freezing, leaving behind the music and the possibility. We didn't talk about that night. Safety demanded silence, and I paid with awkward study sessions, Aaron no longer texting late, the growing distance in our shared steps. I tried convincing myself it was right, but each time I saw him smile at someone else, a dull ache throbbed. Not jealousy, but knowing I'd set the rules and lost at my own game. One afternoon, we met at the lake. Leaves covered the water, reflecting the gray sky. Aaron said he had a chance for a project in another city over summer. "Might be good," he said, like testing my reaction. I said, "Congratulations." Safety. Again, safety. As we parted, he touched my arm lightly, a gesture now rare. "Dylan," he said, "I need to know where you are." I looked at him, the lake, myself in the rippling water. I said I didn't know. For the first time, it was the truth. After that afternoon by the lake, time suddenly felt loose. Everything still happened. Classes, assignments, notification emails, but I felt a beat slower than the world. Aaron didn't disappear. He just shifted out of my orbit, enough for me to realize how big the void I'd created was. I started noticing what I'd missed. Evenings he spent in the common room with others, laughter echoing down the hall but no longer calling my name. Times he shouldered his backpack and left early, saying project meetings. I told myself it was natural, everyone had their own life. But the emptiness didn't listen to reason. One day in communications class, the professor assigned a personal essay on choice. I sat at the screen, cursor blinking like a challenge. I wrote about safety, about choosing the low-risk path, about avoiding out of fear. I didn't name Aaron, but every word pointed to him. When I submitted, my hand shook, like I'd confessed to someone who'd never read it. That weekend, the school held an outdoor movie night. I planned not to go, but went anyway, like a habit seeking possibilities. I saw Aaron on the grass, next to a group of friends I didn't know. He looked at ease, light from the screen softening his face. I hesitated, then approached. We greeted each other, politely, properly. I sat down, keeping a safe distance. Safety now felt like a cold wall. In the dark, the movie played, but I couldn't follow the plot. I watched how Aaron leaned to whisper to the person next to him, how he laughed, how he lived when I was no longer central. A quiet jealousy rose, not fierce, just persistent. I hated the feeling because it exposed my selfishness. I wanted to keep him close without paying the price. After the screening, I mustered courage and called him aside. We stood under the trees, dry leaves crunching underfoot. I said I missed him. Aaron was silent for a moment, then said he missed me too, but missed a version of me that hadn't shown up. Those words didn't yell, but they hit. I wanted to defend, to explain, but every excuse sounded like an excuse. Dylan, he said, I don't need you perfect. I need you real. I looked at my hands, fingers used to gripping tight. I said I was scared. For the first time, I didn't hide it. Aaron exhaled, like he'd waited for that a long time. He said he understood fear, but he couldn't live forever in someone else's buffer zone. The days after, I tried changing. I initiated texts, invited coffee, said more real things. But truth isn't a switch. Safety had rooted deep in my reactions. Each chance to take a step, hold hands, speak clearly, I hesitated. Aaron noticed. He didn't blame, but his patience had limits. The peak was Aaron's presentation. He spoke fluidly, passionately, the room silent in attention. I sat in the back row, proud to the point of choking. When everyone clapped, I stood first. Afterward, in the hallway, he pulled me aside. What did you think? He asked. I said he did great. He smiled, then leaned down and kissed my cheek lightly. Quick, discreet, but not invisible. My heart leaped out of my chest. I glanced around, saw an eye flick past. I stepped back, instinct over choice. Aaron froze. That moment stretched endlessly. Then he nodded, like noting a fact. I think, he said slowly, I can't keep doing this. We talked that night. No yelling, no big tears. Just honest exhaustion. Aaron talked about the summer project he'd go. Not just for the opportunity, but because he needed a place where he didn't have to guess who he was allowed to be. I listened, throat dry. I wanted to keep him, but I knew I had no right if I wasn't ready to step out of safety. When he left, the hallway felt longer than usual. I sat on my bed, staring at the blank wall, and for the first time admitted, safety didn't just protect me. It was taking away what I loved. But the admission came late, and I didn't know if it was still in time. The weeks after, the campus wore a different silence. Not from lack of sound, but from Aaron's absence in the places I'd grown used to seeing him. The library corner table empty. The stone bench by the lake unmarked by our shoes. I walked the hallway expecting a door to open, something that no longer happened. I tried filling time, took on extra assignments, joined clubs, ran longer. But each activity only clarified. I was running from guilt. Not guilt for loving, but for loving half-heartedly. I thought about the cheek kiss, quick, discreet, and my reflex to pull back. My body had chosen before my mind could intervene. Safety was an instinct I'd practiced too long. One afternoon, the professor returned the choice essay. I got a high grade and a comment. Your honesty is stronger when you let it go all the way. I smiled bitterly. I'd been honest on paper, but not brave enough in real life. I saw Aaron again in an unexpected place. The student advising office where I went to ask about exchange programs. He sat across the row, holding a folder. We greeted properly, lightly. I saw faint shadows under his eyes, determination in his straight posture. When my turn came, he stood to yield. That gesture, familiar, choked me. Outside, we exchanged pleasantries. Aaron said he'd leave school earlier than planned for the project prep. I wished him luck. Safety wanted to slip in, but I held it back. I asked if he was okay. He nodded, then said okay didn't always mean easy. I wanted to say more, but he checked his watch. Time, what I'd always thought I controlled, was on the other side. That night, I didn't sleep. I wrote, not an essay, but a list of things I hadn't said. I wrote about fearing others' eyes, family, losing the stable Dylan. I also wrote about how Aaron made me want to be braver. The list was long, each line a small cut. By morning, I knew what I had to do, even if unsure I could. The next day, I found Aaron at the lake, where things had started cracking. Leaves were sparse, water clearer, sky cold. He arrived a few minutes late, breathing lightly, apologizing. I said no apology needed. I needed to speak. I told, not roundabout, about my fears, how I'd used safety as an excuse to avoid responsibility for emotions. I didn't ask him to wait. I just said the truth, for the first time, all the way. Aaron listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't save me from pauses. When I stopped, my hands freezing, he said truth late was still truth. But timing was part of choice. He said he loved me, that word fell like liberation in sentence. He loved, but he couldn't put his life in someone else's safety zone again. We hugged. A long hug, not discreet, not hidden. I didn't pull back. This time, surrounding eyes weren't central. But that moment couldn't reverse schedules, erase times I'd chosen silence. Aaron whispered he hoped I'd learn to choose myself, not just safety. I nodded, tears hot in the cold wind. The day he left, I helped carry his things to the car. Sky clear, sun pale. We talked small things, roads, weather, coffee in the new city. Before closing the door, he touched forehead to mine and said whatever happened, our feelings were real. I said I knew. As the car rolled away, I stood still, not waving. Not for safety, but to feel the full loss. The weeks after, I lived differently. Not dramatically brave, but brave in small choices. Speak truth, don't retreat, allow myself to be seen. I didn't know if Aaron and I shared a path anymore. But I knew safety's price, and I didn't want to pay it again. Winter came faster than I thought. The campus covered in thin white, sounds muffled. I walked slowly, breathing air cold to the burn, realizing I no longer avoided voids. I left them as necessary silences to hear myself. I started speaking out, not to everyone but to those who deserved. A classmate, a running club friend. I didn't declare, didn't perform. I just shared. Each time, my heart raced, but no longer paralyzing fear. It was life's beat, what I'd forgotten, choosing safety over truth. There was an email from Aaron one late evening. He told about the new city, lab by the river, stronger coffee and wind. He didn't promise, didn't pull me to the past. He just shared. I replied, not over-edited, not avoiding emotion. I said I was learning to stand tall in my own life. Aaron replied quicker than I thought. I'm glad for you. Those words didn't close everything, but opened a gentle space, where love wasn't twisted by fear. I understood loving didn't always mean staying. Sometimes loving was letting the other go, and yourself grow enough not to call it failure. At semester's end, I returned to the lake. Water edged in thin ice, leaves all fallen. I stood there, remembering the rainy afternoon, Halloween night, the cheek kiss and retreat reflex. I no longer blamed my old self. He'd done his best with what he knew, but I wouldn't let myself go back. I wrote a piece for class, this time not on choice but on their costs. I wrote safety could shield short-term hurt, but quietly drain what made you alive. I wrote bravery wasn't fearlessness, but not letting fear decide. Reading aloud to class, my voice shook, but I didn't stop. Graduation day came, sky strangely blue. I looked around, seeing faces that journeyed with me. I didn't see Aaron, and it didn't break me. It just reminded that some stories are beautiful because they're not complete as we want. Receiving my diploma, I smiled. Not because all was okay, but because I'd chosen real. That evening, a message. A photo of the river at sunset. Aaron wrote, "I think you'd like this." I did. I also liked my current self, the one who no longer put safety above love, no longer used silence to guard fear. If anyone asked what I lost, I'd say, I lost Aaron the way I'd hoped to keep him. But if asked what I gained, I'd say, I gained myself. A Dylan who doesn't run when his heart speaks. And perhaps that's the lesson I needed here at this time. Safety made me lose you, but it also taught that next time I love, I won't stand behind my own wall. I'll step out, despite cold wind, despite eyes, and let love have a chance to live fully.